I'm Danny Loma, been with DocuSign for 7 years. I'm the Senior Engineering Manager and Technical Lead on the DocuSign administration applications, and this is my partner today, Frank.
Yeah, so my name is Frank Tsai with the DocuSign Professional Services. I'm a technical consultant, and we help the customers integrate wholesales with their APIs and other technical applications.
Okay, so quick overview of what we're going to go over today. I know this is centered around developers, so we want to get to the demos and the Q&A as quickly as possible, but I do want to spend some time going over organizations, what they mean here at DocuSign, and how you can use them to speed up your deployment of DocuSign within your company. So quick show of hands, anybody here built an integration with the DocuSign REST API? Familiar with it? How many people here are familiar with the concept of organizations at DocuSign? Okay. So organizations are kind of born out of this idea that companies have these unique business needs. You have different departments, sales, legal, engineering, procurement, whatever it happens to be within the company. There's business units, and for some of the companies out there, there's global offices. So these are all things you need to consider, and some of the questions we've gotten is what's the best way to structure your DocuSign deployment? And there's a lot of questions that go into that when you're first looking at DocuSign as a solution. Within your company, you might have security and privacy concerns. You want to make sure that the HR documents are staying within the HR account and that they're the only ones that can access them. You might have different account level settings, configurations to stay in compliance. Things even like date sign format. Maybe everybody in the company needs to have the same date sign format. Documents retention settings have to be the same. There might be billing and invoicing concerns, so you need to know which department within the company has the most active users on it, who's sending the most envelopes so that the company can spread out the bill as appropriate. Or you might have data residency concerns, say with the EU and US, that things that are signed and acted on in the EU stay within the EU and things within the US stay within the US. So these are all things to consider. It's a lot to think about, so how do you end up managing this all? And the idea was organization admin came out of this, and it was a way to roll up your accounts into one administration experience. The accounts still have control over what they do, but there's a layer over the top, I guess, which is organization admin, and it lets you control and look at the users and account configurations and everything within your company. This is the UI, so when you first log into the DocuSign administration experience, if you have organizations, you'll be greeted with this screen instead of the standard. It was billing usage, now it's the new admin homepage. But this is a centralized area where you can look at your accounts, all of the users within it, let you keep things up to date and in sync across the entire organization. And then actually what we're going to talk about today, the APIs, let you build some integrations that'll automate your compliance story for you and keep everything going. So the organization APIs, some of the things we've heard from admins are user management and compliance are really the top asks. I mean, everybody wants their job to be easier. Large companies have things to worry about, users, you're hiring a lot of people are leaving the company, people need to be updated as they change their titles. So user management was important, and we're going to dive into that a little bit now. Say it's the first of the month, you're a large company, 100 users just started. Those users all need to get into the DocuSign system. So through the UI, the way you would end up doing that is you log in, you go to admin, you go to users, you add a user, you fill out the email address, the username, the title, anything else that goes along with them. You choose the accounts that they're going to go into, the permission levels they have, and then you repeat this 100 times. So, I mean, that's a lot of clicking, a lot of manual filling stuff out. When you're all done, you run a report and you compare it to your original list to make sure everybody got in the system the way they should have. We boil that down to an API request. Basically, there's a post endpoint. We'll show you what the call looks like later. But you can see here accounts is just an array, so you can add users to multiple accounts in the same request instead of having to go back in and add them multiple times to multiple accounts. So now you have your list, you compare it to your original list, you realize that you made mistakes and maybe punched things in incorrectly on a dozen users. So you go through the update scenario. And the way this looks from the UI is, again, you log in, you go to admin, you select the user you want to operate on, and then you edit them, maybe add and remove them from an account, change their title, change their email address, and then repeat it a dozen times. Again, run your report, compare it. Like, this is getting fairly monotonous at this point. So we made an update API where, again, it's the same thing. You feed in your user ID, you make the updates you need to the user across accounts, you get your response, and basically you're done. You can program that into a loop and take care of all dozen users at a single time. So there's an add users, update users, close users, looks very similar. I didn't want to put the same screenshots on a bunch of different slides and bore you guys this morning. So The one thing I do want to call out, and Frank will touch on this in the demo, is that bulk actions are available. These calls let you operate on a single user, but we also give you the ability to do bulk operations. You can download a list of users across the entire organization, and you can also change a CSV and upload that and update all your users at the same time, add users all at the same time. So that was a little bit on user management, how we go about that. The other piece is increasingly important is compliance. Making sure everything's up to date, making sure the users in the DocuSign system are the users that are supposed to be there. So there's 3 types of information that are typically asked for from a compliance perspective where users are concerned. You want to know how many active seats are in DocuSign, how many users are actually in the product, who has admin level permissions, who can affect the account, who can change things in there. Anybody have any exceptions to the login policies that are put in place by your company? And who is using their domain email to sign up for external accounts. You might have Frank at foo.com signing up for free accounts outside and using his company email address. So you want to know this information. So one last UI slide. This is the last one I have. For active seats, again, you would go back to the admin console. You'd go to the account, you would go to the users, and you would download the users for that account. And then if you have 100 accounts, 150 accounts, you would repeat that for every single account you have. Now you have a series of CSVs that you've downloaded. You got to combine them all, and you end up with this nice list of who's all in the system and what they can actually end up doing. So from an API perspective, we built get users and get user. The get users is just a paged list. It comes back paged if you have 25,000 users, 100,000 users. We didn't want to give that all at once, so you can make a series of calls and just continue getting a subset of users on the account until you reach the end. And if you need additional details, you can actually call then and get details for that user once you've parsed out the list. So we have a Fortune 100 bank we've actually worked with, and their use case was really interesting to automate their compliance story. They've hooked into their user management system, and the way this ends up working for them is they make a call to get users. They've actually changed this to the bulk export of users. They were beta on the organization API program, and we've made some improvements based on their feedback. But essentially, they call and get the users. They parse it and they compare it with their user management system to make sure that the people in DocuSign are the people that are supposed to be there. And this is interesting because the user management system might be administering other applications you have. You might make sure other things that are deployed on site are up to date and in sync. So user management is kind of their central location. That's their record, I guess. So they compare it with that, and then anybody that's out of date, they add, update, or they close based on the information that they have. And then they repeat this. They run this on a daily basis, get all the information, make sure DocuSign is up to date with and what they expect it to be. So with that, we'll have Frank jump into a demo on how some of this works.
All right, so before I begin, I want to ask who uses the REST API to dynamically add users at this point for their systems? 1. Anybody use org API already? None. Okay, well then this is for you. All right, so I'm going to show you some Postman samples. And where is my login? Okay. All right, so you're adding up the REST API. If you add users, then you probably know that you get an activation email, and then the user will have to then click the email to activate. Well, with the org API, you no longer have to do that. You can auto-activate, especially if you have organizational admin. You can do it from the console at the moment, but with the API, you can automatically activate. User will not get any more emails. So that's a big win for you there. Let's see. So let me log in here. I'm going to show you on my left my DocuSign account, and it'll be easier to see this way. Okay, so have everyone seen the organization admin yet in the GUI? Okay, so you'd be familiar with the screen here. I'm going to go to my org and look at my users here. Okay, so now we're going to Postman. And everyone's familiar with Postman? Okay, great. All right, first I'm going to go ahead and make sure my token is fresh. And the first use case is adding a user. So dynamically adding a user with the org API. We have the org endpoint. Okay, we specify the organizational ID. And in the body of the request, is this readable? Okay. So I'm going to specify the username. Make sure it's a new user. First name, last name. This is their email. Okay, I specify the default account ID. Okay, and I'm going to add them to 2 accounts simultaneously. So within the accounts element, I have 2 accounts. So Worldwide Co. HR, just a company name and a default. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and send. Okay, success, I get the response back. Now I'm going to come over here to take a look at the user so you can see. Okay, so we have the user. They're added to 2 memberships. They have account 1 and account 2, and the default account we specified. Okay, their permission set we set as viewer. We didn't set their groups. So now the next demonstration is in your system, let's say the user's name changed, so we're going to update them. So from here, here's a scenario. Let's say you want to get a list of the users by their domain. So in the org API, I would click on domain users. This would give me a list of all the users in your domain. In the API, what I first have to do is find the domain ID. So this endpoint here, org URL, with the org ID, reserved domains. Then I'm going to search for the domain ID. So I have multiple domains. So I can claim multiple domains for my organization. So the one I want is this one here. So I copy this ID over. Then my next search, I search based on this domain. Okay, and then I'm going to look for that particular user. Okay, so I found them, so he exists here. Now another way is, so let's say I go directly into that user. I bring up his details. In the org API, I can use the profile endpoint. So I just pass in by his email. I search by the parameter for his email. And then it brings me the response back for this user. I have the user ID. Okay, so the next step, if I want to update the user, so I have the user ID. So this may update my variable here. Okay. The next call we have is updating the user name. So this will be a post to the profiles endpoint. I specify the user ID that will match the user. That's the key. All I'm going to do is change, add a number 2 to the last, to his username. Okay, and then I specify the accounts that I'm going to update. So I have 2 accounts. He belongs to 2 memberships. I'm also going to change one of his groups in his permission profile. So if we look now, he's a viewer, Momentum 5 new. Okay, the result is 200, that's a success. Let's refresh the screen here. Okay, so now it's the sender, group is IT, and new 2, so his name changed. We changed his permission and group for one of the accounts. Okay, so the next demonstration will be updating their email address. So I don't know if anyone ever tried updating the email address before, but that required user intervention to change their email and update their password. But now you can do that all seamlessly and automatically. So we're going to do the email address endpoint. We pass again the user ID as the key. The email, we're going to just say, right now their email is momentum4.new. We're going to change it to new 2. So that was success. Okay, well, sorry, his email is now 4. We'll just change it again. Good catch there. Same user ID, so that ID doesn't change. So from here, since we're filtering by the email address, we're just going to add a 2. And so as the email's changed, if we want to be sure, we can get the user's profile. Oh, we're looking by their email address, so we just add a 2. And we can see the user here searched by 2. Okay, the last step, we're going to close this user's account. pass the user ID. We pass the accounts we want to close. So we can choose which account we want to close. I want to close all their accounts. And then if we come over here and look at the user now, their membership is closed. Okay, this will make a little more sense, so let me just show you a quick demo of how the bulk export works from the GUI, because the API call is very similar. Okay, so we're going to go into the bulk actions. And note this is a feature that you have to have at least an Enterprise Pro or certain level of a license or add-on to get. Okay, we're going to look at the users, and we're going to do an export. So there's 3 different types of exports. There's users and memberships, where you see all the users for all the different accounts. You can look for all users in your domain, specific to your domain. Or you can find out users, and I'm sure everyone has the experience where you own a DocuSign account, and you own the domain, let's say DocuSign.com. And you have your coworkers or your employees, they are using their own free DocuSign account. And you can't manage that because it's their own account. So you want to prevent that. With the org admin domain you set up, you want to prevent them to sign up from their own account. They have to be managed in your organizational account. Okay, so that's what external domain users are. You want to find out and clean up any users that made their own account, and you have to delete them or close them, or ask them, hey, you got to move your envelopes to our organizational account because you're not in compliance. All right, so the demo here is I'm going to show the users and memberships. So we're going to just specifically look for 2 accounts, so all the users in those 2 accounts. With this interface, I can't say which one, but in the API, I can. So I'm going to set and create an export. What it does is it creates a job. The job's going to run, so after the job's completed, I can then download the results. So right now, this job is in progress. Let me just refresh it. I'll try it again. There we go. So it's done. So I click View. Then I download it. And then if we look at it, you'll get a CSV. You get the slide ID, the account IDs, the GUID, the account name, the user, this is the API user ID. So this is something you could use if you're integrating with the application I was referring to earlier. That's the ID you will need to use to impersonate when you're sending the envelope. You have the full name, first name, user status, if they're closed, pending, the date added, members, and other information. If you want to look at their name ID for their federated information, you want to look at the domain export. Okay, so that's pretty much how the export works. Now for the API, it's very similar. The first thing you're going to do is going to create the export queue. And so this will be the user list. And there are different parameters that you can specify for what kind of export it is. So I'm just going to specify the accounts. So the type is going to be organization membership export. And I'm going to specify 2 accounts. So I'm going to send that request. Okay, so now it's been queued. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check on the status. Okay, I'm going to need the export ID. So here's my export ID. I'm going to update my parameter here. And I'm going to check on that status. Okay, I can see it's completed. So now, once it's completed, I get a metadata URL, or I'm sorry, I get the actual results URL for the actual download. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this export result ID, and I'm going to actually get this export. So export list ID. I just update the ID here. And when I get it, it's going to give me the CSV file so I can see the CSV results here and I can download it, and then I can programmatically process that. So that's an example of the bulk export in the API. Any questions on that? Yeah.
Change the format to JSON?
I don't think so. No, just CSV.
Oh, it's not controlled by the acceptor.
I don't think so. I can try it, but I don't think so. Any other questions? Any other questions overall on the organization API? Okay, well, I give it back to Danny. And then from Curtis slide.
Okay, so Frank covered the user piece, the way you get, add, update, move around users in the system. So one thing to note is that with the bulk at the end, there's another piece that helps keep you in compliance. There's a bulk import and export of account settings. So I touched on it a little bit earlier. If you have maybe a specific date time format that needs to be across all accounts within your organization, document retention policies, login policies, the bulk import and export of account settings let you keep everything up to date. And you can kind of do the same thing, pull it, look at all accounts at a single time, update the values that need to be updated and import it. If you want to see a demonstration of that, there's actually a breakout in Golden Gate 5, Continental 5, excuse me, at 1:30. And then, so that's available now. The account settings coming soon though is app tokens, and app tokens are the idea that you can authenticate your application itself instead of a user and let you act on behalf of a user just via the application.